Before getting started, this video is available ad-free in an audio podcast form on locals.com for monthly subscribers. If you enjoy the channel, please consider joining on there. It's basically Patreon with a more beneficial revenue split and some better systems. Also, my entire content library is available on Odyssey, which is a YouTube platform alternative for those that want to branch out. Links are down below in the description. Alright, today I want to run down 5 of the greediest games in history because, honestly, I really don't know. I just sort of got started going down a rabbit hole and just kept on going after that. Before diving in, though, I have to make a few clarifications. First, I specifically held off on calling this the top 5 greediest games in history because there are certainly a whole bunch of crappy mobile and gacha games I just never even heard of. Second, I try to constrain this to popular downloads. I have no doubt there are some insane examples of industry greed that run far below the radar, but when focusing on titles that have a large enough audience to most likely be recognized, and more specifically by a Western audience, this was the list I came up with. Third, and lastly, a list like this can never actually be accurate owing to the simple fact that many of these online games are designed to contain infinite spending, or at the very least require so much time and money to fully complete or max out that it would be totally incalculable. To compensate for this, I've opted to examine the games through the lens of a single maxed out squad, or an amount of spending that leaves you with a competitive number of maximum star, maximum strength characters, rather than a completionist approach of how much it would take to obtain everything. In addition to this, a lot of the calculations are extremely loose. There are so many aspects to a lot of these games, such as energy over time, drop rates for hundreds of separate activities, loot box pull ratios, currency conversion values, randomization in any given player's experience, and much more. There are so many things to calculate for, constructing an exact top 5 list becomes almost completely impossible. So to compensate for this, I've extrapolated based on individual estimates that I could find. If it takes a certain amount of in-game money to get a maxed out character or item, and a certain amount of characters/items are present on any given team or necessary for different activities, it is reasonable to assume a relative cost based on the purchase price of currency within the game's microtransaction store. Knowing that, we can get an extremely loose idea of how much money the game can suck from your wallet, with a reasonable threshold that avoids the pitfall of trying to calculate exactly how much an infinitely greedy game is designed to take. Also, grain of salt, some of that currency or some of those materials will end up being earned through the gameplay itself and will not require a purchase. So ultimately, these are extremely loose methods of analyzing a ballpark estimate on how many thousands or tens of thousands of dollars the game is looking to drain. Without further ado, let's get started. Number 5, Harry Potter Hogwarts Mystery. Harry Potter is a long-standing fantasy property, and Hogwarts Mystery is merely one in a long line of successful games based on that universe. However, unlike its predecessors, and unlike most other titles in the entire industry, the game takes multiple egregious extra steps in its endeavor to exploit the player base. For starters, though this game probably doesn't have the highest actual price tag when compared to other entries on this list, it decided to employ a brave new standard of forcing you to pay. Not only does this game have an energy system, which is basically just a throttling mechanic to stop you from playing as much as you want and corral you into buying refills, not only does it have such a system, it also employed a dirty little trick called the Devil's Snare. The Devil's Snare, similar to the actual Harry Potter lore, would strangle your character and require energy to escape. However, this particular energy sapping plant would require so much of that energy to escape that it would actually drain your entire energy pool, even if you went in with your reserves completely full. This meant that you could open the app, start playing, encounter Devil's Snare, lose all of your energy immediately, which meant you could not play anymore for a lengthy period of time, and you would literally be forced to look at your character being strangled on screen until you paid money or waited hours on end. That right there is almost enough to earn the game a spot on this list immediately, but there's more. Aside from the already ridiculous price points, a scarf, for example, could cost upwards of $20 or $30, but aside from that, in mid-2018, the developers began to implement a new currency system which led to some issues, I guess I'll call them. As they rolled the system out, it became clear that different players were actually paying different prices, and the literal effect was that you might be paying significantly more to play the game and overcome the restrictive energy system than your friend, who could do the exact same thing and buy the exact same amounts of currency, but spend less money in the process. Lastly, the game is titled as free-to-play, but there were and are documented instances online where players were purchasing items or boosts or whatever only to enter a future scenario where they must pay a certain amount of gold, but they didn't have it in their inventory. That's not so bad, except the game would not let you leave the screen to go and farm it, to go farm the gold. You were stuck forever, unless you bought the microtransactions, effectively turning this free-to-play game into a series of traps and pitfalls that would just flat out obligate you to fork over your credit card information or restart the game completely, losing all progress and enduring the same issues all over again. Any of these problems on their own, or the simple fact that the game has a nearly perpetual loop of draining your energy through a variety of methods just to try and force you to buy more, would probably not have qualified it for a list of the greediest games in history, but combined, these factors mesh together in a way that outpaces their effect individually. Even if these things have now been changed or partly solved, and even if the combined total that you will likely end up spending is far below the other entries on this list, Harry Potter Hogwarts Mystery has successfully earned its place. Number 4, Genshin Impact. Here's where a large number of gacha fans begin screaming and whining. Pause the emotions, okay? Just pause them just for a second. Gacha fans are fully aware that they get ass blasted by the monetization systems. They know this. They are okay with this for the most part, and they have every right to spend their money how they want. However, Genshin Impact has a unique presence in the industry right now, and thus it needs to be considered with a modified perspective. The game has successfully broken out of the typical gacha market and landed square in the center of Western PC and console audiences. Not only that, but the gacha pull rates, as per many veterans I've spoken with and a number of online postings I've read, are at or below the comparative threshold for most, if not all, of the competing industry. The game has unbelievably low reward ratios, and when you calculate for these values, it starts to become clear just how greedy the title is. Teams consist of 4 characters, and based on one Reddit user's calculation, you can expect to pay about $2,000 for one of the more desirable characters and enough duplicates to max out their constellation, which is effectively just their skill tree. This can obviously be supplemented by free characters or characters that are 4 instead of 5 stars, but when you look more broadly, the game is designed to extract through pull rates that are comparatively lower than the competition, and from an audience that is possibly less familiar and less comfortable with the concept of gacha games to begin with. The game is designed to extract many thousands of dollars, many thousands, in order to have a few extra characters that diverge from the standard free lineup. As an aside here, a lot of people will be like, no, I play free and I have blah blah. I don't care. Whatever. Good for you. I'm discussing the hypothetical of looking to max out or nearly max out a team of characters that are part of your desirable lineup, your most desirable lineup, no matter who they might be, without devoting absurd amounts of time. Basically, supplementing the game to a pace and portfolio you enjoy that is not throttled down deliberately with whatever methods they have constructed for you to use. Additionally, meta balancing for a game like Genshin Impact, if history teaches us anything at all, is going to evolve rapidly and be rebalanced around pull rates, as well as payment ratios. For a team of maxed out on-meta 5-star characters with supplemental weapons, players should expect to pay many thousands of dollars. This is not to say you can't play free or that you can't operate with a significantly less enhanced team of characters, but if you examine the complete scope of this entire title, it absolutely earns a spot on this list. Number 3, Summoner's War. Summoner's War is a massively popular mobile game boasting over, I believe, 50 million downloads. The title is pretty straightforward: summon characters, level them up, enhance their artifacts, battle enemies. Same as with multiple other entries on this list, it can be played for free, but if you even scratch the surface of how much money it is designed to obliterate, you might be shocked. A very simplistic way to start estimating one single aspect is to look at runes. In a Reddit thread about average upgrade prices from 12 to max level for a single rune on a single character, many users were discussing values in the range of 1 million mana stones. If you look at the store in Summoner's War, you would find that the crystal conversion into mana stones will let you exchange 1,000 crystals for 2.1 million mana stones, and $100 with bonuses for 3,000 crystals. This puts you with $100 to probably full upgrade 3 runes, which is just half of one character. That's just one set of 4, ignoring the idea of replacements, elements, ability lineups, etc., ignoring the star level, all other currency forms, the energy system, because it does have one, and so much more. With just that as an estimate, a maxed out team is already on pace to cost you, just like Genshin Impact, thousands of dollars. But Summoner's War goes deeper and deeper. There are more ways to pay, more currencies to suck you into the store, and more currency sinks as well, like buildings, building times, mana stones to speed that up, etc., etc. As I said before, the amount of calculations needed to define how much one would realistically spend to max out in this game is an absurd number, and the amount of alternative free-to-play time it would take to do so, or that even possible, is likely decades. But just for one team's maximum runes, right now, you would be in a cycle of spending hundreds of dollars over the course of a couple weeks. To reiterate, the game seems perfectly playable as a free user. You are not forced to pay, as far as I can see, but estimating the underlying greed, Summoner's War takes a firm spot on this list. Number 2, Battle Legion. Battle Legion is not as popular as Summoner's War, but it still has well over 1 million downloads, and is also a game I have much more experience with. I have played the game during a particular vacation and for a few weeks after, and all the estimates I will give are extremely loose, keep that in mind, but I will actually try to undershoot them rather than overshoot. The game is pretty simple. Set up your army, send it out to fight other players, rinse, repeat. Pretty much that's it. There are a bunch of unit types. Each one can be upgraded, I believe, to level 12, maybe beyond, but I think it's 12. And it's pretty fun for a couple days when you get started. However, it's one of the most greedy games on planet Earth when you actually dig deeper. Estimating this was fairly simple. From level 8 to level 9, from personal experience, for most units, it's upwards of 5,000 gold to level them. You get like a few hundred gold from the daily rewards from that little crate thing, and a bit here and there from other sources / gem conversions. To upgrade one unit one time from 8 to 9 requires about, maybe a little less, a full week of saving and logging in every single day. This makes no mention of the unit shards that you need. The unit shards that have to align with the actual type of unit that you want to upgrade. Hundreds and hundreds of them from random little daily rewards and progression bonuses. But just focusing on gold here, a week to level one unit one time from 8 to 9. Here's the thing, you simply can't win some of the modes with a single static unit composition. You need alternative stuff to place in, and on top of that, a single battlefield will easily hold more than a dozen units rather quickly, like 16 I think is what I got up to. The end result is that you'll need hundreds of thousands of gold, millions actually, to even begin getting a single army towards maximum level. Again, that's like a fifth of the overall resource requirement. I'm not even talking about unit shards. This means you can wait like 5 consecutive years logging in every single day to have maybe half an army at or near max level, or you can pay many thousands of dollars, and if you do expand this broad strokes estimate to unit shards, which I haven't even done, you're up in the $10, $20, even $30,000 range without question to get an army that probably isn't even fully maxed out with the units that you want, and is more likely close to maxed out, if that, and instead has whatever you were lucky enough to get even after that ridiculous spending. This avoids things like runes, which expire, by the way, and require real money to be obtained in any legitimate number. Runes are also basically essential to making your army perform well at any mid to high bracket of PvP and in all important encounters, which leaves this game as one of the most predatory things I have ever seen or played, and even more disturbing, it is hidden extremely well early on. One last trick that they use is saying 200% value on special offers that spring up in the store, or something similar to that. It's an arbitrary number. And if you actually look at the offer, that's a completely made up number. That percentage is just not real. The extra value sign is really just some arbitrary, let's see if they buy it sales trick. And I also find it incredibly hard to believe that they are not manipulating price offerings and packages and all the deals based on prior spending. Because yet another mechanic is the Royal Shipment container, which can pop up randomly and offer one of these falsely labeled deals in the store for 24 hours, but I have never once seen a duplicate, and all of them are inaccurately labeled. I do not for a second believe that these deals are being given in a curated, standardized way across the entire player base. Battle Legion is a whole new bracket of greed, masked behind a few hours of easy fun, and there is no doubt in my mind that if a comprehensive and mathematically accurate list of most greedy games in existence were to be ever constructed, and I mean a really accurate one, the game would be on that list for sure, or at the very least an honorable mention. But now, the moment of truth, number 1, and to the surprise of no one probably, it's Raid Shadow Legends. Raid Shadow Legends is, at the very least, iconic in the industry for what it is. The game is plenty popular, prolific with its marketing, and generous to YouTubers, but it is also one of the greediest things I've ever seen. Adding this in post-script, it actually turns out that like the CEO used to work in the gambling, like the literal gambling industry, and I think it was Australia. I have a whole video on that. I'll link it down below, I guess. But Raid Shadow Legends has ties to the literal casino industry. So putting all that aside, I'll just talk about what the game is, not the other kind of shady history that it has. Most of the things I've discussed for the previous titles remain true for Raid. It spams you with offers that do not seem to be uniform across the player base. There is an oppressive energy system, the whole thing is loot box based, and the number of flaws, greedy systems, and areas of exploitation could be discussed for hours. However, for the sake of time, I'll boil it down to some of the simple estimates. A Reddit user by the name Cone for NL detailed with clarity how it will take roughly a month straight to get one 6-star character, and also bring that character up to a competitive and valuable level. Not so bad, right? Wrong, because Raid, despite all of its many faults, does have a lot of content and characters cannot be used for all activities equally. A team of 4 in one area could get utterly destroyed, but in another it's actually useful. Most of the characters are unusable trash, so you have a loot box system that is almost completely composed of filler material, low drop rates with unusable champions, and weeks upon weeks of dedicated work when you get something viable. Just look at this list of offers and packages in the microtransaction store. These are all different premium packages with different potions, currencies, items, skill tomes, and shards, which are necessary for progression and tightly throttled down to force you into the store over and over and over again. I don't even know how to begin estimating the actual cost of this game if you were to try and progress at a decent pace and supplement whatever is available for free with microtransaction spending. There are resources that bottleneck the bottlenecks. There are things you can't get enough of, things you can get too much of, and no way to convert between them, while all of your problems are held over your head and an overpriced, loot box-based microtransaction hell store is proposed as the fix. What makes it all just that much worse, though, good enough to be number one in this video, is their marketing. The game spends an exorbitant amount of money on YouTuber promotion and paid advertisements because, for some reason, they have found unbelievable success with the tactic of just throwing money at the internet marketing machine rather than actually constructing a game worthy of your time. Basically, influence as many people as humanly possible to enter the system, construct the system as the most predatory, addictive maze that they can, and some of these players, inevitably, become financial slaves to the dopamine. Raid Shadow Legends is by far the most greedy game on planet Earth right now, at least in my opinion, without actually doing all of the math, which seems almost impossible. For some reasons that I have outlined today, and more reasons that I probably will never even truly know, and, as I stated previously, the true amount of money it would take to max out a complete set of characters is unknown to me. And if you intend to do so with any degree of reliable speed or progression pacing, it becomes an absurd, horrifying number that should not exist in gaming. Now for some honorable mentions. Number 1, Star Citizen. I'll keep it short and sweet. Did you know that Star Citizen has a Legatus supporter pack that costs, I think now, $35,000? Did you know that it's on a webpage you can't even access until you've given them over $1,000? No? Well, yeah, that earns an honorable mention slot, seeing as it's a game that has the nerve to even propose a $35,000 supporter package when it's been burning money in a pile for 6+ years. Honorable mention number 2, FIFA and NBA 2K. These ones probably really should have been on the actual list, but I talk about them so often I decide to branch out a bit. For FIFA, getting a team of mostly icons will run you maybe $2,000 or $3,000 at least. Could be more depending on who you choose, and this happens like clockwork every year, and it's a reskinned game every single year. Want a great new team in 2021, which is basically the same game as 2020 and 2019 and 2018 and all the way back, without wasting almost the entire year of just grinding for them? Pony up, fork it over, pay the hundreds, even thousands of dollars year after year. NBA 2K also has a whole host of other greedy practices, from advertising tactics to specific player card scandals and rewards, retractions, whatever it is. But the point is, these two sports franchises absolutely deserve a spot as honorable mentions. But that's it. This is not a list of the only greedy games on the entire market. It's also not a list saying that you're a bad person if you play any of these games. It doesn't reflect on you really at all. That's what they're designed to do, rope you in and keep you there. But hopefully it was a fun highlight of some of the worst games out there in terms of greed. And if you have any games to add, please leave them in the comments down below. I'm not saying these games can't be fun and shouldn't be played. I'm saying they deserve to be called what they are, which is to say some of the greediest games in history. If you want to support, links down below, merch, locals, Odyssey, as well as another YouTuber to check out, but I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching, and have a nice night.